Good morning, everyone, and welcome to C-Space Storytellers. I'm Dave Wilson, Vice President, Technology and Standards at the Consumer Technology Association, and I'm really happy to introduce the panel this morning and kick off this really exciting day of activity here at C-Space. We have an amazing lineup of speakers and brands today, and they're going to be discussing, how technology is changing the way that we connect with consumers. They'll answer the questions of how do we balance creativity and science, and what does it all mean for marketers and agencies? And they will discuss how the new era of marketing has moved from mad men to math women. This morning's moderator is Jane Hynes, Senior Vice President, Global Communications at Salesforce, the world's #1 CRM company. Jane has led Salesforce's communication strategy for more than 12 years, from its days as a startup through its IPO to the Fortune 500 company it is today. Jane's counsel and communication strategy has been integral to establishing the company's leadership. Joining Jane is Kristin Lemkau, the Chief Marketing Officer for JPMorgan Chase. Kristin oversees brand, advertising, media sponsorships, marketing analytics, and communications. And finally, please welcome Gary Briggs, Chief Marketing Officer and Vice President of Product Marketing for Facebook. Gary leads branding and marketing efforts for all constituencies of users, developers, and potential consumers of new products. So without further ado, Jane, I turn it over to you.
All right, thank you so much. Well, thank you all for joining us this morning. You guys are the ones that didn't go out too late last night, so we appreciate that.
Made your flight.
Yeah, or you actually made your flights.
Yeah.
Well, without further ado, we're here at CES. This is the world's biggest expo for technology, and technology has had a huge impact on the marketing world, particularly in the last, I'd say, 5 to 10 years. And it's also changed the expectations of consumers. We can now Google anything. We can, research products before we buy them. How has those changed expectations of customers changed the way you market to them?
The biggest thing that I think is happening is a lot of this idea of this art and math, I think, is absolutely true. And in lots of ways, marketing, I think, is going back to really kind of some fundamental roots, which is good. I think there's lots of assertions that go on around this is dead and that's living, and I don't think that's actually true either. Let me kind of explain both points. One is, I think, the kind of core point of you've got to have a really good insight, you've got to have a product that matches that insight, and you have to tell and build a great story around that, I think, is absolutely true. And then what's happening today is there's just a great ability to, and it's really great for marketers actually, to have this combination of the responsibility which you've always had with now this ability to be accountable and be able to demonstrate results, which I think is actually making the conversations with CFOs and CEOs easier, and actually just getting marketers to be, have an ability to be more, influential in overall. So I think that generally that's a good thing. I kind of try to feel that some of the assertions that people make about things being kind of 100% true, I think, has never been the case in marketing in large part. But I think in terms of getting to clarity, it's much better than it's ever been.
I think I'm on now.
Yes.
No, I was saying the relationship with our customers has become almost more intimate because banking has become much more of a part of your everyday life. We've got 22 million people on our mobile app. They're checking their balances every day. It's come a long way from when you balance your checkbook or you go into the branch when you have a type of transaction. Which is a great thing. And so I think the two things for us are they clearly want to be able to bank the way they want to bank. They want more self-service. They want to be able to enable themselves on the phone or online. And so we're responding to that and having more capabilities on our app to be able to deposit a check. This year, you'll actually be able to withdraw money on your ATM from your phone, which will be great. And clearly, we have an extraordinary amount of data about our customers that they trust us with, and they want us to be able to use that for them as a benefit. They're very clear. They know we have it. They want us to be able to use it in a way that's beneficial to them, not just to sell them things.
You actually said something interesting about the mobile app, and that was a big game changer for you guys.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that you're seeing emerging that you're really excited about that you think is going to be potentially the next big game changer for you?
Mobile payments. Mobile payments is a big one for us, and we're seeing some emerging new players like Facebook and Apple and Samsung and Venmo. We think there are some big advantages that we have with 100 million accounts and 55 million households and a mobile app, and we are actually a payments company and a credit company, and we think people will trust their bank but it's also one where we will run the risk of being disrupted as a user interface between us and our customers with things like Apple Pay. So we have Chase Pay launching this year, which will be our answer to that.
Yeah, I mean,
what about you?
Yeah, and just to pick up on the payments point, the U.S. is actually late on a lot of this. And if you look at what's going on in Asia, look at Kenya. I mean, Kenya, what is the GDP is something like 15% of the GDP of Kenya, maybe higher now, goes through M-Pesa. So the idea that this is coming is absolutely true, and I've certainly seen just as a consumer in the last kind of 6 months.
Right.
And you actually see it here in Vegas right now with Samsung, big push they're doing for their payment product, but a really rapid expansion. And I worked at PayPal back in 2005 when we were kind of doing text payments and using text message for payments. That didn't work very well. I actually used to be at Google and worked on the launch of Google Wallet. That didn't work very well, but it's now really working, and you're seeing consumers really pick it up.
And Gary, you kind of mentioned the whole Mad Men to Math Women piece, and there is so much data out there, and it's changed, how we can personalize and how we can target. How is Facebook utilizing that information, and also how are people utilizing the Facebook platform?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with one place, which is that when we talk about consumers, I'll talk about Facebook and I'll talk about our advertisers. Consumers, one of the biggest pieces of feedback we get from consumers is a little bit to the point you were making, which is you understand a lot about me, so if I see things that aren't relevant to me, you're not doing a very good job. And there's absolutely, to be fair, there's absolutely consumers who are concerned about the amount of data, and there's this balancing act that certainly we're always in, which gets a lot to the core ports of a brand of trust, right? But that's a longer question. We can come back to that. But certainly consumers are expecting in lots of places where, if you have this indication from me before that I've done something, please don't ask me again. And that expectation is really going up. For Facebook, one of the things that we do is there's two products that in our advertising that services that do quite well. One is called Custom Audiences, which essentially allows customers to be able to go in and find people who are similar to essentially what they're looking for demographically, psychographically, lots of different parameters, and be able to target in a way that is kind of classic as far as consumer targeting is concerned, but really just more powered,
more detailed demographics
than it's ever been. And the other is one called lookalikes, which essentially is your profile kind of is like this person. I want to find more people who look like you in terms of direct response and things like that. And that's another product that again has gone quite well for our customers. And we work with them. We work with Salesforce actually on that product, and try to do that as a way to help our businesses and our customers find a lot more customers. And certainly what we're seeing on the advertiser side is a pretty rapid shift to mobile. And so the broader point, I think there is a recognition, certainly I've seen, where there's a lot of advertisers who might have felt they didn't quite get the digital shift. And now they're recognizing they're not going to miss the mobile shift. And I'm seeing less intransigence around the move to mobile than I saw from the move to digital. I think it has to do with the fact that it's just it's been a bunch of years now where this has kind of been supposedly a thing, and now with it as a thing, I think everybody's trying to figure out how to capitalize on it.
And what about you? How is data and personalization kind of changed the way you market?
So we have, like Facebook, an extraordinary amount of data. When I think about sort of my counterparts in consumer packaged goods and how they struggle with kind of knowing who their customers are, we don't have that challenge. And we have all of these owned channels to where before I spend $1 on paid media, we can reach 55 million households either through one of 5,600 branches or 39 million people on Chase.com or 22 million people on the mobile app, et cetera, where we have gotten it right, I think, is effective targeting on those owned digital channels. So when you call up Chase.com, you will get sort of a personalized decision engine, model-driven offer that's based on sort of your engagement or acquisition. The big opportunity for us, I think, is to find ways to do that across all of our channels. We have a lot of legacy systems that aren't yet connected well, and to do more of it off us. So partnerships with Facebook on things like custom audiences can be really effective.
Going one level deeper on kind of the personalization theme, brand loyalty has a lot to do with, an emotional connection that you develop with people. How are you using technology, something that's very unemotional, to kind of really develop those emotional connections?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to what Gary said about the right personalized offer in the right space. So if I know you're in the market for a mortgage and we give you a pre-qual at the time that you're in the purchasing cycle, is that an ad or is that sort of valuable? So that's sort of where we're focused on trying to get that exactly right. I want to go back to your point about, I think we need to be very, very careful as marketers about taking that interruptive ad format that has worked on television for 50 years or has been the only model we knew and pushing it into the screens that people are fleeing television for. So just kind of taking that interruptive ad, shrinking it, and stuffing it into an interstitial or something that people can X out of. So you're almost seeing this barbell effect where you are getting these great relevant ads. When I click on a pair of chairs at One Kings Lane, they show up in my Facebook feed kind of staring at me, begging to be bought, right? Or you're going to get some crappy interstitial that you have hard time getting out of that is going to be brand dilutive. And I think we're sort of at a real turning point where you can see the emergence of ad blockers or TiVo Bolt or non-ad supported TV becoming so dominant that the interruptive ad almost starts to go away.
And Gary, for you, the emotional connection you build with Facebook users is, typically around them telling their stories. Mm-hmm. And, as marketers, part of that balance of science and data and the emotional side of things is this kind of this vehicle for storytelling. So can you tell us a little bit about how Facebook, philosophically thinks about storytelling and the power that it has for marketers?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that we tried to get to is to your point that what people are doing every day on Facebook is trying to connect to the people and the information that matters to them. And a little bit to pick up on something you said a second ago, one of the things I think is really amazing one of the things you look for in creative is attention. And the interesting tension is that technology has for a long time been portrayed as being cold.
Right.
But actually what is happening, what we see on Facebook is actually it's pretty human, actually very human. And ultimately about friendship. So a lot of what we try to portray in the communications that we do is around how friendships and information among friends is really shared and how that gets stronger through the platform. And that's what we see for Facebook and in a much more visual way. Even you see more artistic way, you see that with Instagram. And I think this idea though that technology is cold or that it can't be kind of human is also a little bit of a generational thing too, mm-hmm. which is, we treat mobile devices and we treat the kind of connection to the web as this new thing. And for consumers, particularly under the age of 25, it just is. It's like going into a conference room or to a hotel room in the US or UK or something like that and being surprised that it has electricity. It just is. And so that people don't really think of it that way. And I think the more that we just recognize, I think to the point you're making before, that you have to kind of catch and understand what the consumer's trying to do at a given moment, and then figure in that context what you want to be able to communicate.
You bring
back.
up a really interesting point, though, and there's the digital natives, right, that have grown up on Facebook, and they've known nothing other than the mobile phone. They never had the rotary dial, that was only in the kitchen, you hid in the closet. So, do you target and do you market differently to the different generations? And what is the most effective marketing tools you're seeing with digital natives these days?
Oh gosh, this is going to sound like an advertisement. I mean, no. I mean, first of all, around generationally, no, we don't. We're not kind of building ads for the cool kids or something like that. I think those days are just over in the standpoint of everybody finds out anything if they want to in terms of a consumer if they're going to dig. And so if I try to say something to some particular interest group and then say something that's in some conflict to another interest group, you're dead.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So we don't do that. And then I think in terms of the communications and what works well, a little bit to the point before, it's not like we make 90-second ads. We've run television commercials in the UK. We've tested television commercials in various markets around the world. We also do education videos on Facebook where we use subtitles. And we use that as, when we use carousel ads to kind of take you through the 1, 2, 3 steps of actually how to use a new product. All those things are part of the communication suite that you have to kind of think about. Mm-hmm. And I think that what we're recognizing and what we certainly talk to our customers about is you can't go through a media plan anymore and say, okay, let's start with TV. I've got, if you will, I've got $10 million Last year I spent $9 million this year, and last year I spent 7.5 of it on television. This year I'm going to spend 8 on television. That's the wrong thing. You basically kind of get to, as you always should have done, what's the idea?
Right.
Let's start with the idea, let's start with the insight, then get to what's the best way to reach people with that idea. And I think that's what's putting the pressure on the industry.
And how about for you? Are you using different strategies with different demographics?
I completely agree with that. You need to be idea-led, and the benefit of that is huge if you come up with the sort of like a girl type of insight, or the sort of Duracell Derek Coleman ad, where not only are people going to watch it and share it and post it organically in their Facebook feed, but Good Morning America is going to be running your ad. So people don't care if it's branded so long as it's good. I think you've got to have a real authenticity in your voice, to your point that you can't be saying different things. We're moving from an era where you're marketing at people to influencing a purchase decision. So the consumers are smarter, they have more information than they've ever had before, they want to connect to brands that are meaningful with them, and so it's a different sort of purpose-led type of campaign than here are the number of accounts I have to get, and here's my budget, and here's my media mix. It's just not the same planning.
Yeah, and I want to come back to the science and creative a little bit.
Yeah.
When you think about your strategy, how do you balance the two, or do you prioritize one or over the other, or does it depend kind of year over year?
I'll cheat and say you have to do both.
Yes.
Like you have to do both. And in many ways, the data enables you to be so much more creative. So back when Don Draper was coming up with that one awesome idea, it's because it had to be awesome for everybody. Now you know so much about your customers, you can test and learn, and you can get to what the right creative is on a mass scale, or you can get to what's the personalized creative for that person. It's just almost much more liberating. I think in direct response, you do have to be more science-driven, and bright orange and $500 offers may not win you a Cannes Lion. And then on the other side of it, there will always be an important place for this great creative breakthrough work, and it should break through not just in your category, and for ours, that's not that exciting. It's across all categories, or for whatever money you're spending on TV, it's going to be a waste. So you have to do both.
What about you?
We certainly, we're very data-driven company, and I think on that point, all I'd say is we're really focused on a very narrow set of attributes and tracking measures that we use to keep track of and understand how we're doing. Certainly, pretty publicly, we've talked about time spent is a big part in terms of people every day, having Facebook be kind of indispensable. So just to kind of drive the point home, we look at that mathematically in a kind of a core attribute of what are the minutes, and we look at it emotionally in terms of what do people play back to us in terms of their feeling that Facebook is indispensable to them on a given day. So both parts kind of are part of how we track.
And obviously with changing technology, all the data, the role of the agency has obviously changed dramatically. How do you see the role of the agency kind of coming out over the next couple of years? Because it's going to continue to change.
This one is a particularly personal one to me. My dad was an agency guy. So I grew up in Connecticut. My dad used to take the train into New York. I always feel I have to say that he was of the era of Mad Men. Actually, when I look and see the show and see the sets and stuff, it really reminds me of going to visit my dad back in those days. I grew up in the Mad Men era without the dysfunction, as I like to say, which is certainly makes me feel somewhat better, I guess. But I would say one of the things that I certainly found, and I've been pretty public about, is we've built an in-house agency to do a lot of our creative. And here's what I'd say is I think for speed and being close to the product managers, which is a huge point for us in terms of the amount of product, new products we're introducing, new features we're introducing, having that speed, having the ability, as you were mentioning, to kind of test a piece of advertising, understand whether or not you're actually resonating, and then iterate. I think you really only get that with more in-house capability. Having said that, we still work with White & Kennedy in particular, and what's really good about that is it's great to have somebody outside your four walls who just calls you on stuff. Mm-hmm. And certainly when you're in a high growth environment and everybody's saying, "Gosh, you're just such a fantastic brand," that kind of stuff. Look, it's nice, but you also can smell your own exhaust. That's not a good thing over time. So it's good to have some truth tellers around you who make sure which agencies are great at. I mean, they by nature, they want to come in and shake things up, which is good intellectually.
Yeah.
How about for you?
I completely agree with that. I think there's an important role for the brand and creative agency to kind of push your thinking and push the ideas and be more connected with what other companies are doing. So we look at Droga 5, our creative agency, as an extension of our team. And the David Drogas of the world may not want to work at a bank, much as I would love them to. But I think when it comes to the data-driven types of marketing, that really does need to come in-house more and more. And particularly when you have the kind of data that we have, where we're not going to allow it to leave the building, more of it needs to be insourced. So we've insourced search, we've insourced a lot of design and creative, and we're obviously looking at insourcing some of the other data-driven types of direct marketing. So the model will change.
Yeah, definitely. And it's not just the interaction with the agency that's changing. Obviously, the role of the CMO is also changing.
That's right.
At Salesforce, we obviously see CMOs taking on a lot more of the customer journey. They're getting more involved in the sales process, more involved in the customer service process. Are you seeing that as well? What do you think are the big changes for CMOs over the next couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, I think the business should own the customer, and we wouldn't think that we own the customer, but yes, you have to get your experience right, and you have to be an advocate for the experience. Otherwise, you're selling crap, and nobody wants to sell crap, and nobody wants to buy crap. So you do need to have that interface, particularly when you're a line of business driven organization, and our customers often cross the lines of business. So I would agree.
How about you?
No, I'd say it's similar. I want to go back to a point from earlier. I mean, the way that these are all interconnected is from a service standpoint. Going back to we were talking about mobile payments. Now I'm finding go use mobile payments, and oftentimes I'm getting the electronic receipt. I'm getting a text message before the cashier even hands me back my paper receipt.
Yeah.
I mean, that's amazing, and that reinforces the brand, because you have the sense of, okay, JPMorgan, Amex, whatever you use is looking out for me, and they're buttoned up. So that gets to the point that in terms of the brand, think about the customer. Yes, that's a marketing challenge, but that's also a systems challenge. That's a customer response challenge. And you as the CMO, classically, and I think even more so because you've got the information and I think are in a position now where you can be held more accountable in a pure way, can go work in partnership with the other parts of the business system to actually represent the consumer and the customer much better than you ever could.
And I think, it's the CMO role is changing, but also the team is changing, because you have 25% of marketing jobs these days didn't exist 10 years ago. How are you thinking about your hiring strategy? How are you thinking about the mix of your team and, investing here and pulling back there? How is that changing?
Yeah, it is an ongoing discipline. So yes, we have a team of mighty data scientists. We have a newsroom where we have our own content creators. We have a whole social team that we have in-house. So none of those jobs existed 5 years ago. I think the challenge is exactly what you said, getting much more disciplined about offboarding some of the old
Making the
jobs that
trade-offs.
we don't do anymore. And I think there's going to be a big change management in marketing as these organizations shift from sort of the campaign every 2 weeks to a data-driven, always-on type of marketing organization where you need those digital natives who can design what that always-on campaign is, rather than the person who pulls a list and knows how to send out direct mail. So there'll be a big shift of certain jobs within marketing, and we're not intending to grow our headcount. So how you actually have that ongoing portfolio mix is a big challenge.
And do you think there's an opportunity for you to retrain existing talent?
Absolutely. But, there's a big change management exercise within marketing. So I think we all get very focused on the industries that we serve being disrupted, but marketing itself is being disrupted at a pace that I have never seen. And I think as the CMO, you've got to be the person who's learning all the time and driving that change, because organizations, particularly big organizations like ours, will always resist. And if you're doing the same thing in 16 that you did in 15, you're probably failing. Back to Gary's point that it's all going mobile. And if we're still on this always on GRP thing, we're in trouble.
How about for you?
Yeah, one of my favorite lines that kind of sums us up, it's a guy named Matt Ackley, who I used to work with at eBay and actually at Google too, who had this great line. He ran internet marketing on our team when I was at eBay, and he said, you can't take the algorithm to lunch. And that's the big change. I was sitting next to a guy at dinner last night who's in publishing, and he was talking about, his dad, who also was in publishing. So we were kind of comparing stories about, ad guys and publishing guys. And he's saying, oh, back in the day, we used to have the helicopter pick us up on the west side, and we'd actually take the helicopter off to Pine Valley. For those who don't know Pine Valley, it's a ridiculous golf course. And the 3 carts would come pick us up, and they told the whole story of how that worked. We don't do that anymore. Yeah, you're not going to do that anymore. That's just not how it's going to work. And it's actually great. I mean, I like to play golf. I really do. Pine Valley would be an amazing place. If any of you belong, please, I'm happy to join you. But it ultimately feels pretty empty to run marketing that way. And I actually really, I'm relatively late in my career. I actually love marketing more now than I did when I started, because I feel, and I think my team feels, more accountable to results, and you have less explaining that you have to do in the hallways to say, just trust me. And as a result, what's happening is the people that you're able to attract into the marketing organization are just a lot of young, bright talent who wants to come into marketing, because they are able to do things that are very math-oriented, and they're able to do things that are very creative. It kind of operates both sides of the mind, if you will, and that's awesome.
Yeah, I don't think anybody will have my job or Gary's job that isn't deeply steeped in analytics on the way up.
Yeah, totally agree.
And that's a change.
And I want to come back to something that you said around, if you're doing, what you did last year, this year, you're probably failing. We all like to see that, big bets in marketing can really pay off. We all look at, who won at Cannes this year and those sorts of things. Do you have a big bet that you're placing this year?
I don't think we have a big bet. I think we have a very aggressive test and learn agenda to identify that big bet. I think the day of sort of swinging for the fences with something that's untested is probably gone. So we're trying to build that discipline in a company that's very metrics and model oriented of what are the 90% of things that are going to fail, so we get the right thing. And ensuring that the Facebook test we're doing in the consumer bank is being properly shared with the people in card so that they can learn from each other. But there's a lot of bets because it's changing so fast. You don't know what the right bet is going to be, or who the failures will be.
How about for you?
I mean, I think the biggest things we're working on are probably geographic. I mean, we've grown really well in lots of markets, are relatively young in some other markets. So geographically, we're going to invest more. So, point being that in the U.S., for example, you're probably not going to see us advertising as much. You're going to probably see us in other markets doing that. And then the other area that's a big investment over for the company is in messaging. So Messenger is growing quite quickly. We're looking at monetization into Messenger. We've run partnerships, developing partnerships with folks like Uber now, and really trying to have people shift from kind of classic SMS to much more enhanced messaging products through Messenger and WhatsApp.
One thing that's going to be interesting about next year, at least in the local TV spot market, a lot of markets will become cost prohibitive with the election. Like any battleground state, you don't want to be buying time in. So we are going to be taking more aggressive bets this year, including with Facebook. Gary, I'll give you a plug, to make sure that we compensate for any advertising that we would potentially do in Pennsylvania or Florida or Ohio, which will be tough.
Yeah, that's a good point. So we have just a couple of minutes left, and I always like to close out with, some advice for folks in the room. Is there one piece of advice or, something you wish someone would have told you earlier in your career that you would give to folks here today? And why don't we go ahead and start with you?
Sure. I think it goes back to the point you need to constantly learn, and learn from the disruptors, learn from, John, from Simul Media here, or from Ben Lair, or the people who were kind of out and disrupting. And for the CMO, you're going to have to do that yourself. Don't rely on your team, because I think they will tend to default to what they've always done.
How about you?
Yeah, I think certainly when I talk to folks on my team is and really kind of a little bit building on the point, but enjoy the shifts. I mean, I think the pace of change in marketing, the pace of change in consumer communication is actually going to get faster. And if you look at that and it's fearful, or you're not really kind of sure, change jobs, go to a different industry. So if you look at that and actually think it's pretty awesome, which it really kind of is, you'll never be bored. And I particularly have kind of a short attention span, and I find with marketing it's much more interesting than it ever has been, simply because the pace of change, the way you're communicating to people can continue to evolve. Even within the app ecosystem, within mobile, that's starting to shift very, very fast. Right. And as a result, I think the ability to learn is like fundamental, and then the ability to make sure you're kind of enjoying that change and the flux. I think emotionally it's really important to be happy with your career.
Is there a single skill that you're having a hard time hiring for? Do you feel like, this generation that's coming up now isn't being trained on?
Well, I mean, I think certainly we'll hire, just to the theme of this. I mean, in terms of math women, as you talk about it, we will hire as many data scientists as we can get our hands on. Mm-hmm. And that sounds flippant. I don't mean to sound flippant. It's just like the amount of people that are coming out of university who have really deep skills and are able to not only crunch but think is a really paramount hiring for us. So I think that's probably the one area.
How about for you?
People who are digital natives, and for us, we look for people who have a certain amount of grit. Which,
what do you mean by that?
I think you need a certain amount of mental toughness, and you need to know how to be a change agent at a big company like ours. And we will look for that as much as we will sort of the skills itself.
Okay. So it's the balance of the hard and the soft skills.
Yep.
Definitely. All right. Well, with that, thank you both very much.
Yeah, thanks.
Appreciate it.
Great. I appreciate it.